to me with a question that lives in the marrow of your being. A question born not only from pain but from bewilderment. Why do those you trusted, those who once embraced you, suddenly turn against you without warning? Why does betrayal arrive like a thief in the night, tearing at the fabric of your sense of belonging? And why, when it happens, does it feel like the very ground beneath your feet is stripped away, leaving you staring into the abyss? I tell you, this is not merely a human accident, not simply the malice of others, though malice may be its mask. This phenomenon is a window into the hidden machinery of the psyche, both yours and theirs. It belongs to the shadowed territory where the unconscious weaves its dramas, where the archetypes move like gods behind the stage of ordinary life. Let us begin not with the external act, but with the inner resonance. When someone turns against you, it wounds you precisely because it touches something ancient within, an archetype that lives in every soul, the archetype of betrayal, of Judas at the table of communion, of Cain turning upon Abel, of the friend who becomes the enemy without reason. This motif is so universal because it emerges from the deep, collective, unconscious, where humanity's oldest wounds are stored. You are not only reliving a personal loss, you are touching the very nerve of collective memory. The memory of exile, rejection, and abandonment. Why would another suddenly turn upon you? Very often it is not because of what you have done, but because of what you have awakened in them. To encounter you is to encounter a mirror, and there are those who cannot bear to see what is reflected in the mirror. You may think it was your kindness that would preserve the bond, your loyalty that would ensure trust, your truth that would anchor the friendship. But the psyche does not always move according to these conscious virtues. In the deeper currents, people respond to you not only as you are, but as what they see of themselves in you. If you unknowingly reflect their shadow, their denied envy, their unspoken resentment, their unlived life, they may suddenly be seized with hostility. It is not you they are attacking. It is their own darkness, projected upon you as a canvas. They cannot carry it within, so they cast it outward. And you, perhaps because of your nearness, your light, your very openness, become the vessel for their unconscious battle. Thus, one day they love you, and the next they strike you down. The hidden reason lies not in logic, but in shadow projection. When we love someone, we do not only love them, we also invest them with our inner images. We place upon them the anima, or the animus, the archetype of lover, rescuer, guide, or sibling. They become for us not just themselves, but a bearer of archetypal energy. And what is invested can just as suddenly be withdrawn. The more unconscious the projection, the more violent the reversal will be. When the spell breaks, to those who once idealized you as flawless, the moment they glimpse your humanity, their love can turn into hate. For love and hate are twin faces of the same projection, both born of blindness to reality. The suddenness is what unsettles you most. You feel as though a curtain has dropped between yesterday and today, as if the person has been replaced by a stranger. But the truth is that the stranger was always there. The unconscious was always moving beneath the surface. You were not betrayed. Suddenly, you were blind to the slow accumulation of shadow that built beneath the floorboards of the relationship. Their smile concealed an unspoken conflict. Their silence hid resentments they themselves could not name. And when the unconscious tide grew too strong, it surged upward, drowning the bond in a flood of aggression. This is why I say, do not look only at the surface act. If you remain fixed upon the injustice alone, you will circle endlessly in bitterness. Look deeper into the hidden architecture of the psyche. Ask yourself, what image of myself did they project onto me? What shadow within them was seeking escape? And more dangerously, what in me allowed that projection to settle? What in me was resonant enough to attract their unspoken hostility? This is not to place blame upon you. Rather, it is to reveal the sacred, terrifying truth. Relationships are alchemical vessels. Every bond you enter is not only human but mystical, a crucible in which light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, meet. When someone turns against you without warning, it is the alchemical fire consuming the vessel. It is painful, but it is also revelatory. For in that moment you glimpse the archetypal forces that move beneath ordinary affection. Let me speak plainly. Many people cannot tolerate intimacy with those who awaken their shadow. If your presence evokes in them envy, inadequacy, or fear, they may unconsciously seek to destroy you, to exile you, to erase the mirror that reflects their own wound. The hidden reason is that your existence became unbearable to them, not because of your faults, but because of your light, your difference, your unyielding authenticity. I have seen again and again how the psyche seeks equilibrium. When someone lives in denial of their shadow, the unconscious compensates by projecting it outward. You may become the scapegoat, the carrier of their disowned darkness. This is an ancient ritual that repeats across history, the scapegoat cast out to preserve the illusion of purity within the tribe. If they turned against you without warning, it is because unconsciously they were seeking relief from the unbearable tension within themselves. What then is your task? Not to retaliate, not to reduce yourself to bitterness, but to see the archetypal truth, to recognize that in being betrayed, you have been invited into the mystery of the shadow. You have been shown what most people never wish to see, that human love is entangled with projection, that friendship is woven with archetypes, and that rejection is often not personal but symbolic. Yet, I know your heart. You do not only want explanation, you want to heal. You want to know how to walk through the wound without losing yourself. Hear me. The first step is to withdraw the projection, withdraw the belief that they were ever simply as you imagined them. See them as a whole person, broken, shadow it, human. When you stop demanding that they remain only the good, the loyal, the kind, you can forgive them not by excusing their act, but by recognizing that it arose from the unconscious depths, and then turn inward. For the psyche is a mirror house. And every betrayal reveals not only the shadow of the other, but the unhealed wound within you. Ask yourself, why did their turning wound me so deeply? What part of me was dependent upon their gaze, their affirmation, their constancy? In losing them, what ancient fear of abandonment rose to the surface? For within you, too, lies the archetype of the forsaken child, the wound of exile that humanity has carried since its beginnings. Do not be ashamed of this wound. To feel it is to be human. To face it is to walk the path of individuation, for only by encountering the pain of rejection can you discover the inner center that no betrayal can touch. When you no longer seek your wholeness in the approval of others, their sudden turning cannot destroy you. You will feel the wound, yes, but you will also feel the deeper truth that within you is the self, the eternal archetype of wholeness, which remains untouched by the shifting tides of human loyalty. This is the secret hidden within betrayal. It strips you of illusions. It breaks your reliance upon outer projections. And it drives you toward the inner source. You are abandoned outwardly so that you may be compelled inwardly. And in that movement, painful as it is, you touch the ground of the soul, where no one can exile you, where no sudden turning can rob you of yourself. Do not despise those who turned against you. They are instruments of the unconscious playing out a role they themselves cannot yet understand. In time, they may come to see what they have done, or they may remain forever blind. That is not your concern. Your concern is to see, to understand, to hold the wound as revelation, for then you are no longer merely the victim of betrayal, you are the initiate into the mystery of the human psyche. You must understand that betrayal is not only an external rupture, it is also an initiation. The psyche does not move forward by comfort alone, it advances by shock, by rupture, by the encounter with the unexpected. When they turned against you, the familiar pattern shattered, and in the fragments you are forced to see what otherwise would have remained hidden. That is why I call this not only a wound, but also a revelation. Consider the dream image of the banquet, where the feast is laid out in abundance. Everyone gathers, smiling, raising glasses in friendship. Yet, as you reach for the bread, the lights flicker, and suddenly you are alone at the table, the others having vanished, leaving only shadows on the walls. This is the dream of abandonment, of being suddenly excluded from the circle of belonging. Do you not see how such dreams mirror life itself? The feast of friendship can dissolve into solitude in a single moment, and yet what remains is not emptiness, but the possibility of discovering who you are when the crowd departs. The suddenness, the without warning nature of betrayal is essential to its archetypal character. If you had seen it coming, it would not have pierced you so deeply. It is the unexpected turn that thrusts you into the realm of the numinous, where ordinary causality collapses and you are face to face with the irrational forces of the psyche. The unconscious moves like a thief precisely because it does not operate according to your conscious timetable. Its eruptions are sudden, its reversals dramatic, for it belongs to the language of myth, not of logic. Think of Peter's denial of Christ. Only hours before, He swore his undying loyalty, his willingness to face death at his master's side. Yet, when the shadow fell, he turned and said 3 times, "I do not know this man." This reversal did not come from his conscious will, it came from the terror of the unconscious. The archetypal fear of annihilation, the story remains with us not because it is historically singular, but because it represents a universal truth. Those closest to us may deny us without warning, not because they cease to love, but because they are seized by forces greater than their conscious selves. And here lies the mystery. If you are to understand why they turned against you, you must see them not only as individuals, but as vessels of archetypes. They are moved by the same ancient currents that move you. Their betrayal is not entirely theirs. It belongs to the archetypal pattern that replays itself endlessly in human history. To be betrayed is to be drawn into the great myth of the scapegoat, the rejected prophet, the forsaken child. But let us turn the gaze inward again. Why is it that betrayal cuts so deep? Because it strikes at the archetype of trust. As children, our survival depends entirely upon trust. Trust that the parent will return. Trust that the hand that feeds will not withdraw. When trust is broken, the child feels annihilation itself. Later in life, whenever someone betrays us, that ancient terror reawakens. You are not only grieving the loss of this friend or this bond, you are grieving the primal rupture of trust that belongs to the whole of humanity. That is why the pain feels infinite, why the wound feels older than the moment itself. You ask, then what is the hidden reason? The hidden reason is shadow projection. Yes, but deeper still, the hidden reason is initiation. The betrayal is a portal to your own individuation. It forces you to confront the shadow of dependency, the illusion of constancy, the childish belief that others can guarantee your wholeness. When they turn against you, you are stripped bare, and in that nakedness, the self whispers, you are whole in yourself. You do not need their loyalty to exist. And do not mistake me. I do not minimize the pain. The pain is real, and it must be honored. To repress it, to harden your heart in cynicism, would only drive the wound deeper into the unconscious, where it will return in another guise. You must feel the wound, but you must also allow it to transform you. The pain is the fire in which illusion burns away. Imagine yourself in the alchemist's vessel, heated by betrayal's flame. The old forms dissolve, the ego cries out in confusion, the heart mourns the sudden loss. But if you endure, if you allow the fire to do its work, you will emerge transfigured. You will no longer depend upon the fragile constancy of others, for you will have discovered the eternal center within. There is another layer still. Sometimes betrayal comes not because of your shadow, nor merely as a projection, but because you have grown. And your growth is intolerable to those who remain behind. There are people who loved you as long as you remained familiar, predictably, small, but when you change, when you embody more of your authentic self, they may suddenly recoil. They feel abandoned, threatened. left behind by your evolution. And so they turn against you, not because you wronged them, but because your transformation exposed their stagnation. Have you not seen this in dreams? You are climbing a mountain, higher and higher, feeling the air grow thin with altitude. Those who once walked beside you stop, refusing to ascend. They shout at you, their words sharp with accusation. Who do you think you are? You are leaving us behind. The dream ends with you standing alone on the peak, gazing into the clouds, torn between loneliness and freedom. Such dreams reveal the truth. Growth always brings betrayal, because not everyone can follow where your soul demands you go. When they turn against you without warning, it may be because your growth has outpaced their courage. You have stepped into a new reality, and they cling to the old. In their eyes, you are the traitor, the one who left the circle. But from the perspective of the self, you are the one who obeyed the call. Their turning is not a judgment upon you, it is a confirmation of your path. The paradox is painful. You long for both truth and belonging. Yet, often, the pursuit of truth will cost you belonging. To individuate is to walk a solitary path, and in that solitude, you may be misunderstood, rejected, even hated. The prophets knew this. The visionaries knew this. The mystics knew this. If they turned against you, you are in the company of those who walked before, whose light made others recoil, whose authenticity provoked resentment. Now listen, when betrayal comes, you are tempted to respond in kind. You are tempted to armor yourself, to build walls so high that no one may ever reach you again. But if you do this, you close the very door through which the self seeks to enter. The task is not to harden, but to deepen, to see that their betrayal does not define you, but reveals you to recognize that their sudden reversal is not the end of your story, but the threshold of a new chapter in your individuation. The unconscious does not waste pain. Every wound it allows is also a seed. If you carry the wound consciously, if you reflect upon it without drowning in bitterness, it will grow into wisdom. You will see more clearly the games of projection, the fragile nature of human loyalty, the inevitability of archetypal betrayal, and in seeing, you will be less likely to be deceived again, not because you will be cynical, but because you will discern the deeper patterns beneath the surface of relationships. Let me tell you of a patient once, a woman who came to me shattered because her closest friend had turned against her overnight. I do not understand. She said, yesterday she was my confidant, my sister. Today she speaks of me as if I am her enemy. As we worked together, we discovered that this friend had long lived in her shadow, admiring her brilliance while secretly resenting her vitality. The moment came when admiration turned to envy, and envy to hostility. My patient at first was consumed with rage, but slowly she began to see that the friend was acting out her own unconscious battle, and that her task was not to win her back, but to claim her own strength without apology. Betrayal became the crucible through which she shed her dependence upon external validation. This is what I want you to see. Betrayal does not merely destroy, it transforms. if you allow it, it will strip away your illusions, reveal the dynamics of projection, and compel you towards your inner self. The hidden reason is that your soul is calling you to deeper wholeness, and the betrayal is the instrument of that call. So when they turn against you without warning, grieve. Yes, feel the wound fully, but then lift your gaze, see the archetype at work, see the initiation concealed within the loss. For you are not merely the victim of betrayal, you are the traveler on the path of individuation. And betrayal is one of its secret gateways. When we speak of betrayal, we are not speaking only of interpersonal rupture, but of archetypal drama. The unconscious reveals itself through myths and symbols, and betrayal has always been one of its most potent motifs. To understand why someone turns against you, you must not only analyze their psychology, you must step into the realm of myth, where the figures of the collective unconscious enact their eternal dance. Consider the figure of Judas. History and theology have argued endlessly about his motives. Was he greedy? Was he disillusioned? Or was he compelled by a destiny larger than himself? From the perspective of depth psychology, Judas is not merely a man but an archetype, the betrayer. And when someone turns against you, they are seized, however unconsciously, by this archetype. They play out a role older than themselves, a role that has repeated across centuries. The friend who becomes the adversary, the confidant who delivers you into the hands of those who scorn you. The betrayal cuts so deeply precisely because it touches this archetypal wound. But betrayal is not only embodied by Judas, it is also carried by Cain, whose shadowed envy turned to violence against Abel. Cain's act was not simply a brother's jealousy, it was the eruption of the archetype of fratricide. The destruction of kinship under the weight of shadow. So when a friend, a sibling, or a companion suddenly turns against you, they are not only enacting their personal story, but also this deeper myth, this ancient archetype that continues to live in the collective unconscious. Another image is the trickster. In myth, the trickster is the one who deceives, who promises friendship but brings chaos. Loki in the Norse myths, Hermes in his mischievous aspect, Coyote in the Native American tales, all embody the unpredictable reversal. One moment they are your ally, the next they plunge you into disorder. Why? Because the trickster belongs to the unconscious force that refuses stagnation. When life becomes too stable, too fixed, the trickster enters to disrupt. In Betrayal, the trickster archetype reveals itself, reminding you that the psyche is not governed by reason but by the irrational necessity of transformation. There is also the scapegoat, another timeless figure. In the ancient ritual, the community would place its sins upon the goat and drive it into the wilderness, expelling it to purify itself. When someone turns against you without warning, you may become their scapegoat. They cast upon you all that they cannot bear within themselves: their anger, their shame, their inadequacy. And by condemning you, they feel relieved. They may not know why they despise you, but unconsciously they are enacting this ancient rite, driving you into the wilderness, so that they may remain blind to their own shadow. To see betrayal through these archetypes is to lift it from the merely personal to the symbolic. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it feels unjust. But when you recognize that you have been caught in the field of the betrayer, the trickster, or the scapegoat, you gain the perspective necessary to endure, for then you no longer say, "Why me?" but "What archetype has seized the moment?" And with that question, you open yourself to transformation. Dreams often reveal betrayal before it occurs in waking life. I have known patients who dreamt of being chased by a friend, of sitting at a table where the food turned to ashes, of clasping hands, only to feel a dagger concealed within the palm. These dream images are the unconscious announcing what the conscious mind does not yet see, that the bond carries shadow, that the friend holds within them both love and hostility, that betrayal is already stirring beneath the surface. To attend to such dreams is to prepare the soul for what is to come, not with paranoia, but with awareness. I recall a dream once told to me by a man whose business partner betrayed him. In the dream, he was standing in a cathedral, looking at the stained glass, when suddenly the glass shattered and the shards fell upon him like rain. At the time he dismissed it as strange. Only later, when the betrayal came, did he realize the meaning. The beautiful image of trust had shattered, and he was pierced by its fragments. The unconscious had spoken, but he had not yet learned its language. Why does betrayal come without warning? Because the unconscious is always working in secret. What erupts suddenly in waking life has been building in the depths for a long time. The hostility of your friend, the envy of your companion, the resentment of your sibling, these may have lived underground, unacknowledged even by themselves. The suddenness is an illusion of consciousness. The unconscious has been moving all along. What feels like lightning is in truth the eruption of a long gathering storm. This is why it is so important to listen to the unconscious, to attend to dreams, to observe the small signs of shadow at play in relationships. Did you not notice the envy behind their smile? Did you not feel the tension in their silence? Did you not hear the faint criticism beneath their praise? The unconscious speaks in whispers before it shouts in betrayal. But often we prefer not to hear, for to acknowledge it would mean facing the uncomfortable truth that every relationship carries shadow. Now let me turn to another dimension, the inner betrayer. When you ask, why did they turn against me without warning? You must also ask, where within me do I turn against myself? For outer betrayal always mirrors inner betrayal. You have betrayed yourself whenever you silenced your truth to preserve harmony. Whenever you denied your own needs to keep another's love, whenever you abandoned your inner voice to maintain belonging, these inner betrayals accumulate, and when an outer betrayal comes, it pierces you so deeply because it resonates with the betrayals you have committed against your own soul. To heal, therefore, is not only to forgive the other, but to reconcile with yourself, to say, never again will I abandon myself for the sake of another's approval. Never again will I betray my truth in order to be loved. For when you cease betraying yourself, the betrayal of others loses its power. You may feel the wound, but it will not annihilate you. For you will know that your deepest allegiance is to your own soul. The hidden reason for their turning then is multi-layered. It is shadow projection. It is archetypal enactment. It is the unconscious seeking transformation. And it is a mirror of your own inner betrayal. To grasp this fully is to step into the mystery of individuation. For individuation requires that you face betrayal not as accident, but as initiation. Do you see now how the unconscious uses betrayal as an instrument? It strips you of illusions. It compels you to face the shadow. It drives you inward toward the self. In this sense, betrayal is a dark teacher, a guide who wounds in order to awaken. You would not have chosen it, yet it comes, and when it does, it carries the possibility of profound transformation. And here is the paradox. Those who turned against you are also your teachers, not because their act was just, but because their act revealed the hidden currents of the psyche. They became instruments of your initiation, unwitting priests in the ritual of your transformation. To hate them forever is to remain bound to the wound. To recognize them as archetypal actors is to free yourself. I tell you, the deepest secret is this. Betrayal is never only about the other, it is always about the self. The self orchestrates the drama, allowing the shadow of another to pierce you so that you may be driven toward greater wholeness. What feels like abandonment is, at its core, the self saying, do not look for salvation in others, look within. So when they turn against you without warning, do not only ask, why did they do this? Ask also, what is the self seeking to reveal through this? In that question lies the key to transformation. When you have been betrayed, your instinct is to close your heart, to bind the wound so tightly that no one may ever reach it again. But if you do this, you do not heal, you calcify. The wound becomes a stone lodged in the heart, heavy and unyielding. The path of individuation does not call you to stone, but to transformation. The wound must not be buried, it must be integrated. Only then does it become wisdom. How then do you integrate betrayal first? By naming it. Too often we attempt to disguise betrayal with excuses, to soften its blow with rationalizations. We say, they did not mean it. Or perhaps I was at fault. But such denial only deepens the wound. To heal, you must speak the truth. I was betrayed. They turned against me. In naming it, you strip away illusion. And in that clarity, the process of transformation begins. Second, you must descend into the shadow. For the wound of betrayal awakens not only pain but rage, envy, despair, all the shadowed emotions we would prefer to deny. To repress them is to give them power. To face them is to disarm them. When rage rises, do not project it outward in vengeance. Sit with it. Feel its heat. Ask what it reveals of your unmet needs, your hidden fears. When despair whispers that you are unworthy of love, answer with awareness. This is the voice of the forsaken child, not the truth of myself. In this way, the shadow becomes not your enemy, but your guide. Third, you must reclaim the projection. For as much as others project upon you, you also project upon them. Perhaps you projected onto them the archetype of the faithful friend, the eternal ally, the sibling of the soul, and when they failed, the projection collapsed, leaving you devastated. To reclaim projection is to see them not as archetypes, but as humans, fragile, flawed, limited. They were never the flawless image you carried. They were always human, capable of both loyalty and betrayal. When you see this, you no longer demand of them the impossible. You accept their humanity, and in turn, you accept your own. But integration is not only about understanding, it is also about transmutation. The alchemists spoke of the nigredo, the blackening, when all forms dissolved into chaos. Betrayal is your nigredo. Everything collapses. The familiar dissolves. The heart lies in ashes. Yet, the alchemists knew that nigredo was not the end. It was the beginning. From the blackness arises the albedo, the whitening, the first glimmer of new form, and then the rubedo, the reddening, the full flowering of transformation. In the same way, your betrayal, if endured consciously, will lead you to a new wholeness. Do not expect the process to be swift. The psyche does not heal on command. It moves according to its own rhythm, slow and mysterious. One day the wound will ache with unbearable intensity. The next, it will feel distant, like a fading dream. Trust this rhythm. The self knows how to weave the wound into wisdom. Your task is to remain present, to feel, to reflect, to endure. Let me speak now of forgiveness. For many misunderstand it. Forgiveness does not mean condoning betrayal or pretending it did not wound you. True forgiveness arises only after integration. It is the recognition that the one who betrayed you was moved by unconscious forces they themselves could not master. It is the acknowledgement that they were caught in archetypal patterns as old as humanity. To forgive, then, is not to excuse but to release. You release the bond that keeps you chained to their act. You allow them to remain in the darkness if they choose, while you step into the light of your own self. And what of reconciliation? Sometimes the other awakens, repents, seeks to repair. If so, you may choose to walk with them again, but only if the bond can now be grounded in reality, not projection. Other times, reconciliation is not possible, for they remain blind, or the wound is too deep. Then you must release them, not in hatred, but in acceptance. Not all companions are meant to walk with you forever. Some appear only for a season, to play their part in your transformation, and then depart. This brings us to the deepest mystery, betrayal as destiny. You imagine that life should be safe, that relationships should be secure, that those who love you should remain constant. But the psyche is not bound to such comforts. The self seeks wholeness, and it will use even betrayal to move you toward it. From the perspective of the ego, betrayal is catastrophe. From the perspective of the self, betrayal is initiation. It strips away false dependencies. It compels you to face the shadow. It drives you inward to the eternal ground of your being. Do you not see? If they had never turned against you, you might have remained asleep in illusion. Their sudden turning was the thunderclap that awakened you. It was the hand of fate, disguised as malice, pressing you into individuation. What felt like destruction was also creation. I ask you now to imagine the image of the phoenix, consumed in fire, reduced to ash. This is betrayal. But from the ash, the phoenix rises anew, radiant with a strength it never had before. You, too, are the phoenix. The betrayal burned you, yes, but it also cleared the ground for your rebirth. The hidden reason they turned against you was not only their shadow, it was also your destiny. And so, when you look back upon the betrayal, do not see only the wound, see the initiation, see the archetypes at play, see the transformation it demanded, for then you will realize that betrayal, painful though it is, was one of your greatest teachers. It taught you that others are human, that shadow is real, that projection deceives, that the self is your true ground. It stripped you of illusions so that you could walk more consciously toward wholeness. This is the path of individuation. To live it is to encounter betrayal, rejection, abandonment, again and again. But each time you face it consciously, you grow stronger, deeper, freer. You discover that your worth is not in the hands of others, but in the eternal self. You discover that betrayal does not destroy, it awakens. So I tell you, if they turned against you without warning, do not despair. Look into the wound and see the archetype, feel the pain, and let it teach you. Withdraw your projections and claim your soul, for in doing so, you will find a freedom that no betrayal can take from you. You will find the wholeness that waits beneath all wounds. And perhaps one day, when you see another suffer betrayal, you will not only pity them, you will know the secret hidden reason. You will know the archetypal forces at play, and you will be able to guide them as I have guided you. For wisdom born of betrayal is not for you alone, it is for all who walk this human path. Now hear this as my final word. The betrayal you suffered was real, and it wounded you deeply. But beneath that wound lies a treasure, the treasure of individuation, the treasure of the self. Do not let bitterness bury it. Do not let hatred blind you to it. Claim it, for then you will see that what seemed like abandonment was, in truth, the hand of destiny leading you to yourself.